Before I begin, I want to offer the City Council's sincerest condolences to Alicia and the entire Gwynn family, and to the extended family of the San Diego Padres and fans from throughout our region. Tony Gwynn was an outstanding ball player, a respected professional, a great family man, and a phenomenal human being. Our city is better because of Tony Gwynn, and he will be sorely, sorely missed. For the topic at hand today, with me are Council President Pro Tem Sherri Lightner and Harry Schwartz, owner of Ace Hardware in the Gaslamp Quarter. We are here today to share with you the latest proposal to strengthen San Diego's workforce. We're here today because we know that there is a problem in San Diego. 38% of all working age households cannot afford to meet basic needs. 44% of San Diegans lack access to earned sick leave. 446,000 San Diego County residents are food insecure, meaning that they do not necessarily know where their next meal is going to come from. And there are currently 50,000 city residents who receive assistance from the San Diego Housing Commission, while 45,000 families are on the waiting list for housing help. This is unacceptable to all of us. I announced my intention to do something about this at the State of the City address in January, and followed up with 3 public hearings on how that change might happen. Just over 2 months ago, here in this room, I announced my proposal to increase the minimum wage to $13.09 per hour over a 3-year period, and to allow workers to earn 5 sick days per year. I made it clear at that time that this was the beginning of a dialogue and actively sought feedback. In addition to those 3 committee hearings, we've had 3 public neighborhood meetings, and I've held more than 30 stakeholder meetings involving more than 80 people from key industries and critical sectors in San Diego's economy. During those exchanges, I've heard that my proposal brought too much change too fast, and that the higher minimum wage would put San Diego at a competitive disadvantage. Our mayor, Kevin Faulkner, has shared that concern. Because of all this feedback, I am proud to announce that a revised measure this morning. The new proposal maintains the 5 earned sick days element and revises the new minimum wage to $11.50 per hour, implemented through 2017. The wage would increase to $9.75 per hour on January 1st, 2015, to $10.50 per hour on January 1st, 2016, and to $11.50 per hour on January 1st, 2017, with indexing for inflation to go into effect on January 1st, 2019. This is a common sense compromise that reduces the potential impact on businesses while maintaining tremendous benefits for our workers and our economy. It also helps to keep San Diego competitive with similar cities, as you can see on the slides that have been distributed by my staff. In summary, the revised proposal maintains its requirement that workers be able to earn up to 5 sick days per year. It increases San Diego's minimum wage to $11.50 per hour by 2017, keeping it ahead of the state of California's minimum wage, and indexes it to keep up with inflation so that our workers are never left behind by a growing economy. I'm proud of this proposal and very proud of the process that reached this point. When I was in this room to announce this initial proposal on April 23rd, a small business owner was here out of concern for his business and his workers. His name is Harry Schwartz, and he is the owner of Ace Hardware in the Gaslamp Quarter. When speaking out in opposition to the initial proposal, Mr. Schwartz had done his homework. He was not opposing a minimum wage increase for political reasons. He had run the numbers for his business. He'd figured out the impacts and what he would have to do to make his ends meet. He shared that analysis with me and told me that he supports a higher minimum wage and in fact already pays people more than the current minimum wage. Ongoing conversations with Harry and his sister Pam and input from stakeholders on all sides of this issue have led us to the revised proposal we have today. I'd like to invite Harry up to say a few words, and he'll be followed by Council President Pro Tem Lightner. Harry? Thank you.
Thank you. Since Council President Gloria introduced the minimum wage increase proposal, as he said, I have been outspoken that while the minimum wage does need to be addressed, the proposed increase was too much for small businesses to endure. I want to thank Council President Gloria and his staff for listening to the concerns of small business owners and for taking action to mold this modified minimum wage proposal. I still believe that a training and seasonal wage is an important concept for small businesses and should be included as part of the minimum wage structure. I hope that the City Council will continue to debate and consider that concept. But the new proposed mandated wages and schedule for implementation over a 4-year period is a compromise that I support and believe will help to address San Diego's poverty issue without driving away small business. Thank you.
Today, I'm pleased to see this common sense measure go before the City Council. Gradually raising the minimum wage and tying it to an economic index will give greater economic stability to San Diego employees and more predictability to San Diego employers, all while helping to strengthen our local economy. As chair of the Economic Development and Intergovernmental Relations Committee, I've held several public hearings over the last several months. We've had lively discussions and robust debate at the committee level, hearing from struggling students, working families, small business owners, labor leaders, and business industry groups, among many others. The result of this process is a modified measure that takes necessary steps to help minimum wage workers sustain consumer spending and continue to spur our economic recovery. I'd like to thank Council President Todd Gloria for his leadership on this critical issue, as well as all members of the public who have participated in this process. I appreciate and commend all stakeholders for their willingness to debate and compromise on the best way to improve wages and provide earned sick days for our workforce. I look forward to this afternoon's City Council meeting. It has all the makings of a truly historic day in the city of San Diego. Council President?
Thank you, Ms. Lightner, and thank you for your help and support on molding this measure. So just in summation, ladies and gentlemen, constructive input led to the development of the current proposed measure, and there remain additional opportunities for feedback to further strengthen this measure in the weeks and months ahead. Whether people have ideas for additional regulatory relief for businesses or other ways we can assist our neighbors in making ends meet, I continue to welcome that input. People will have a great opportunity to do just that this afternoon, as Council President Pro Tem Lightner alluded to. Later today at 2 p.m., the City Council will consider 2 items related to strengthening our workforce. The San Diego City Employee Retirement System will present an actuarial study disclosing the impact on the city's defined benefit pension plan of any increases in proposed compensation or benefits contained in the initial proposal for an increased minimum wage and earned sick leave. We will also consider directing the city's labor negotiators to negotiate an additional increase to the minimum wage with our employee bargaining groups. After we conclude the meet and confer process with our employees, the City Council will have the opportunity to move forward with a final proposal. I expect that that would occur sometime in July. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we have today is a modest effort to address the needs of the working families in San Diego. This compromise is one that is balanced, it is reasonable, and most importantly, it's achievable for the people who need this kind of assistance. And I'm proud to be a part of it today. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that folks may have. Gene.
Why no exemptions?
The question was, why no exemptions? I think many of you have seen me throughout this discussion talk about that we cannot have exemptions. The minimum wage is a floor. It is a level below which no one will fall. And that's exactly the problem, is that the floor is so low now that people are falling behind even when working 2 or more jobs. Not having exemptions is a fair way to level the playing field. Well, in our study of other communities that have taken on this issue, by making sure the playing field was level, that actually was better for business because there wasn't a competitive disadvantage for one way or other, just simply because a group had a louder voice perhaps in the political process. And also administratively, I think it'll make it far easier for us to ensure that the wages are paid correctly. When you look at some of these other jurisdictions that have passed minimum wage increases, they're incredibly complex. Different groups are exempted or phased in at different times, and that becomes very, very confusing, I think, to consumers, to workers, to employers. And to try and keep this proposal as simple as possible was one of the main principles I was interested in when we started this effort many months ago.
So do you see accounting problems with the tip-centric industries?
Well, I think there continues to be those who will be opposed to this common sense measure that really is, again, balanced. Many of the concerns around tips ignore the fact that state law prohibits tips to be considered when factoring the minimum wage. That is really an issue for Sacramento. and something that those industries are welcome to lobby on. Unfortunately, that is beyond our abilities here, and again, it adds to a level of complexity that we are not able to necessarily handle at this local level. But that said, the exemptions that people have sought, I think ultimately does not achieve what a minimum wage is, which is that everyone has a basis from which to start paying in our city. Who else? Carlos, I saw your hand.
Yeah, have you shared this with districts 4, 8, and 9, being those that they are going to be the most affected? That's where you're going to have the most people benefit from this, on this modification?
The question was whether or not other council members have been consulted. In conformance with the Brown Act, I have limited my discussions with other council members on this issue, but I believe that they're finding out now. And I think every council member has sought some sort of a compromise on this matter. We recognize that additional disputes would result in no progress. And I think that even for those who are strongly supportive of an increased minimum wage, those who might want to see figures $13.09, $15 per hour, $17 an hour, even those folks will end up supporting this proposal because they understand that it's achievable, and that's what we're trying to do. We want to put money in the pockets of the lowest wage workers in this city as soon as possible. This would accomplish that. Yes, sir.
Why not include Mr. Schwartz's training wage proposal? I think it was 120 days.
That's correct. The question was about the training wage. And this, as I mentioned in my comments a moment ago, today's actions are about accepting the actuarial analysis that's required by our city charter, as well as to direct our negotiators to engage in the meet and confer process. So I mentioned there are possibilities for additional changes. The training wage discussion came up at committee last week. I don't know, kind of to Carlos's point, what political support there may be, as well as what legal opportunities we may have. Councilmember Kersey has asked for a legal evaluation of the training wage. And so between now and final consideration, which again will be later this summer, that and other items may come forward. But for right now, what we've focused in on is the wage rate and the phase-in, because that was really what needed to be arrived at today.
Would you support that concept then, possibly?
I'd be willing to entertain it. What I've been interested in all along is to get some measurable progress for working families in San Diego. And what we have been trying to do with industry is to find out what we could do to get them to support this, and how can we do it in a way that's supportive. We've heard exemptions for small businesses. We've heard about exemption of tipped employees, healthcare credits. There have been a lot of different requests. Again, my overall point of view on this is to keep it as simple as possible. A training wage has been one of those things that have been discussed, and it's possible that there are other amendments that could happen to this proposal before it's finally adopted or acted upon by the City Council. Dennis?
Do you expect this to go to public vote or to be enacted through the City Council?
So the question is this going to be a vote of the public or an ordinance of the City Council? The fact of the matter is we have council members that want to do either approach. And so I have stated my preference for an initiative. I'm willing to compromise with an ordinance in order to get, again, the support that would be necessary to actually affect this change. And what we are trying to do is leave both options on the table for as long as possible as a part of the ongoing discussions about what will actually yield a result for working people. Kelly.
I arrived a few minutes late.
It's okay.
If you already explained this, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Was this, did you already have this set out prior to last week's committee meeting, or was this,
No.
did this happen after?
Actually, this is a part of why I'm grateful for Mr. Schwartz's presence here today. Last Wednesday's committee hearing, Mr. Schwartz is one of the few business owners who have come forward with some specific numbers. Dennis has given me some numbers which were helpful and actually not far off of where we're at in this proposal. Others have made different suggestions, but I thought Mr. Schwartz's suggestions were very reasonable. Some of the ongoing discussions I've had with large industries and big corporations are not far off of these numbers, and so I could see, I think, what the compromise looked like, and that's what I believe we have on the table today. Doesn't mean to say we'll have, I think, 100% support. Naturally, plenty of people oppose reasonable things all the time, but in this particular case, where I see the convergence of a small business person, the city council, and some large businesses, this seems to be, I hope, the sweet spot, and one that will, again, yield a real result for workers.
Do you foresee a referendum if it's dictated by the City Council and it's approved by the City Council now for the borders? Do you see a referendum coming out on this situation?
question is would this is there a potential for referendum if the city council were to adopt it for an ordinance? That is always a possibility. We certainly have seen additional use of that tool by special interests in recent years. That would be really unfortunate, in part because you'd be asking workers to vote against a pay raise for themselves. And so there's some practical considerations where that's concerned. Of course, if we don't have the opportunity to implement this, there's always the potential to come back in future election years to do this at a different number and at a different rate in which there was not the public process that yields a compromise, a reasonable compromise. And so I would caution folks from thinking in that direction and to instead gauge in this process and come up with something that we can all support now, again, because I think the most urgent thing is, Carlos, tonight we got 45,000 families who are asking this city council for housing assistance, and we need to put some money in their pockets today, because these are not folks who are not working. These are folks who typically are working.
Without going, I know Mr. Shards and Ace has been paying more than the minimum wage in your employees, but there has been families that have been working for 15, 20 years and are still making the minimum
Yeah.
wage. Will this be a political weight in order to send a message to this region specifically?
Well, I think
I mean,
you're talking about
in the heart of what you are trying to pursue.
So the analysis that we have seen, the studies and research that we've seen, is that over 80% of small businesses already pay better than the minimum wage. And so in many cases, people like Mr. Schwartz, who've been doing the right thing for a while now, is one of the good guys. What we've been concerned about are the folks that you're referring to who keep their workers at the minimum wage and only wait for regulatory action. That's a part of why the consumer price indexing for our minimum wage is really important, because you can't wait. This boomer bust cycle doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help workers who are kept at artificially low wages for a long period of time, but it also doesn't help businesses who have that kind of instability and unpredictability in their wage rates. If you have to amortize years or decades worth of inflation overnight because suddenly there's the political will to do a minimum wage increase, that's harmful for business. That's a part of the discussion that we're having now, that if you want to adjust this to perhaps where we think it should be, it's too disruptive to business. So I think that this measure will be incredibly helpful for those who are working in industries that do rely solely on minimum wage workers. What we know is that that is not necessarily small businesses, because many small business people have direct daily interaction with their workers, and I think as a result, that's why you see the higher than usual pay, higher than the minimum wage at small businesses. There are other industries, of course, that don't necessarily have that same approach. Jim, I see you.
Mayor, Chamber of Commerce about this latest proposal?
They are aware of it, and I'm sure they're evaluating it. I mean, obviously, we're making this public now, and there are many more weeks to come of discussion, dialogue, and process. I would hope that they would see this for what it is, which is, again, a moderate proposal that is reasonable and achievable. If I know the mayor, I think he is a very pragmatic guy, and he does understand that this is a concern in our city, and that a balanced approach like the one I'm proposing now would be in the best interest of our community. So I hope that he'll come on board as well as some of the others who have previously been opposed to this effort.
Question for Mr. Schwartz.
Sure, yeah.
Sherri, how would you explain your metrics, your evaluation of the price points adjustments you're going to have to make to, let's just say, those in the hospitality industry, the employers that are going, I don't know, those numbers work for him, they don't work for me necessarily. How do you reconcile the gaps that they may see?
I think that any small business or any business in general is going to see a gap as a result of a wage increase. And my thought being that with a compromised proposal, hopefully we can work within our businesses, whether it's minimal expense reduction, because many of us have already gone through that with the recession, or whether it's minimal price increases, that somewhere we'll pick up that difference in the wage. That's, I think that applies whether it's a hardware store, a restaurant, or any type of business.
Some people are talking about we're going to have to enforce massive layoffs, cut back on hours. Our customers are not going to accept the adjustments that we're going to be required to make without those.
Well, I think when we were looking at a number like 1309 or a really rogue number like $15 like Seattle did, that's a true scenario. A 65% wage increase was going to have a significant impact on all business types. Now we're looking at a number that's much lower over a longer period of time. I think it's more manageable, and that's the key, is being able to manage the growth of that minimum wage so that we can work it into our business plans over the next 4 to 5 years.
Thank you. And just if I may, Gene, I would refer you to the city of San Jose, who adopted a minimum wage increase in 2012. And the sky is falling predictions did not come to pass. In fact, we saw a reduction in unemployment in that city. And I would suggest that is in part because low-wage workers have more money to spend in their community. These are not folks who are going to take their additional pay and put it on the stock market or invest it someplace. They're going to spend it on food, on shelter, and on provisions for their families. And so I think that when you look at communities that have done this responsibly, I think that you've seen generally upsides. And I expect that that same thing will happen here in San Diego. To maybe perhaps give you another perspective, if I may, he's coming, I believe, from work, so that may be why he's a little bit late. But Ivan Jimenez is here, and he would like to, he is a fast food worker, and I'd give you the opportunity to say a few words if you're comfortable. Come on up, please.
I'm just here to show like my side of the story, my point of view. I'm a fast food worker. I've been working at a Burger King for like more than a year now, earning $8 an hour, and I just want to let you guys know that there's different ages within this job. There's heads of households. There's people like me who they're barely moving out, having to pay their own rent, and I personally have to support my mom. Our father hasn't been around for like ever, and so all the weight falls on my shoulders. I have to help raise my sisters. I have to buy them things that are essential, and I think a raise would be the world is not going to end, and it's just going to help our communities. We're going to have, I see it as a way for people to invest in the future, because the young people should stop being suppressed or held at a certain potential. And I really think that this should pass, and hopefully it does. It would mean a better future for my family and others. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ivan. I appreciate you being here to give voice for folks who don't always have an ability to speak.
Just one more thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just want to mention that there's plenty of workers who would like to be here, but they can't because they can't afford to miss a day of work. So I'm here representing them too.
That's right. And that's awesome. And you're welcome back anytime. And James, if I may say, folks like Ivan, they don't have trade industry groups. They don't have paid lobbyists here to advocate on their behalf. But they have Sherri Lightner, they have myself, they have members of the city council that they vote to put down here to try and represent their point of view. And I hear a lot of stories. I was at Lindbergh Field last Tuesday. I was coming back from Sacramento trying to lobby for some more public transit money, which I imagine might be helpful in your life as well. And I'm walking down the terminal, and a worker jumped over the counter, raced up to me. You can imagine I might have some security concerns at this point. And he said, "Sir, I just want to shake your hand." And given recent history, I thought he might just say, thank you for last year. What he said was, "Thank you for fighting for the minimum wage. We need it." And I'll tell you, I get that all over town. And these people, they don't have money for fancy research reports. Again, they don't have the time to come down for a rally downstairs before a city council meeting. They have to do their jobs. But they're counting on this city council to deliver something. And what we've put forward today is modest. It's not as much as I might personally want. There are certainly folks who want more than that. But it's important that those people know that their city cares about them, that we're going to do something to help them out, and that we're going to try and lift them up out of the poverty that they're in and reward them for working. This is not a handout. This is not welfare. This is about telling people, if you're willing to work and play by the rules, we're going to do our best to support you. I think that's what San Diego's about, and that's what we're going to try and get accomplished later this summer when we take final action. Maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll have to wrap it up. Yes, sir.
You began talking about Tony Gwynn. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a little more. Would you just talk a little bit about what Tony means to the city? Mayor's ordered the flags at half staff.
Well, I certainly appreciate the mayor's direction to do that. I think that's incredibly appropriate. We reserve that honor for San Diegans who've made tremendous impacts in this community, and Tony Gwynn certainly is that. And he transcends the sport, right? I mean, he is the embodiment of our city. Just a good guy trying to do good things, someone who stayed here his entire career, who stayed here after his retirement and gave back to the university where he learned, helping to raise a new generation of ball players. I had an occasion to meet him more than a few times, and importantly, meeting his wife, who's just an incredible woman in her own right. This is a really important family for our community. He's an important man, and his contribution to this city will live long after today. What I'll say is I kind of always go back to what my parents taught me, which is that if you cared about something, you should leave it better than you found it. I think that Tony Gwynn leaves this earth today having left the city far better than he found it. Kelly, you're going to get the last word.
Why not let the negotiations happen during the city council meeting today, during a public hearing process, and kind of see what wages are arrived at there instead of coming forward with a new proposal?
Sure. The question is, why not allow this to continue to negotiate? I mean, the answer is that's a possibility. You know, that certainly council members could be swayed by public testimony, could have their own ideas. The question was before about have I checked in with it? I have not done that, and out of respect for public meeting laws. So that's a possibility. What I'm trying to say is, listen, I've put a lot of effort into this. Ms. Lightner's put a lot of effort into this. And so we've sat down with these folks. We've had the tough discussions. We've had the email exchanges and the phone calls to say, how is this going to impact you? And this is my best shot at it. This is what I think is a moderate proposal that is balanced, that is reasonable and rational. And for all those reasons, my hope is that my colleagues will support it. Naturally, people may have other ideas. There are other concepts that are out there, things like the training wage, that may come up over the next number of weeks. And I think, as with any legislative process, we'll certainly give those suggestions vetting, consideration, and possible adoption or rejection. But we are not done yet. But again, I think that what we're doing today is setting the wage rate and the phase-in that we can responsibly introduce into this community. And then again, that will yield the result that we're looking for, which is a raise to the minimum wage that will actually be able to be implemented as soon as possible.
Todd,
Guys, all right, Carlos.
USA versus Ghana. What's your prediction?
USA all the way. What are you talking about?
Score.
I got my jersey underneath this suit right now.
The score.
The score? I don't know. Lightner, what do you got? You guys got any predictions? You got money on this, Carlos? Listen, I think Lightner's saying 3-1, and Sherri on the council knows numbers, so I'm going to go with 3-1, like Ms. Lightner said. But this is going to be awesome, and I was out in North Park this past weekend. That's the place to watch the World Cup, by the way, and it's good stuff. We're looking forward to it. But yeah, I'll catch the jersey later. It's pretty sweet. All right, guys, thanks so much for your time.